Sometimes it's just one single event that can change the entire course of history. It's like a spark that lands in a powder keg, taking all these simmering tensions and just igniting them into a global fire. And an alleged attack just happened that has leaders around the world seriously worried it could be one of those moments. In this explainer, we're going to break down what happened, why it's such a big deal, and what could happen next. So, here's what we're going to cover. First, we're going to look at a pretty chilling history lesson on how one attack can kick off a world war. Then we'll get into the specifics of this alleged attack on Putin's home. From there, we'll see how world leaders are reacting. We'll tackle the big one, the terrifying nuclear threat this all brings up. And finally, we'll look at what's happening on the ground right now. Okay, so to really get why this is so alarming, we actually have to take a step back in time. You see, history has this powerful and frankly kind of terrifying way of repeating itself. It shows us just how fragile peace can be. Just look at how fast this all happened. In June of 1914, a Serbian nationalist assassinates Archduke Franz Ferdinand. Now, that's a single death, but because of this crazy, complex web of alliances, by August, we're talking just a couple of months later, all of Europe was plunged into the Great War. One event was all it took to kick off a global catastrophe. And that brings us right back to today, and a really crucial question for all of us. With all the geopolitical tensions we have right now, could the assassination of a single powerful individual once again be the spark that ignites a much, much larger conflict? Well, that brings us right to the present day, because something just happened that a lot of people are afraid has crossed a really dangerous and unprecedented line in modern conflict. So here's what it boils down to. An alleged attack was carried out not just against any Russian target, but specifically against the personal residence of President Vladimir Putin. And this right here is a really, really critical distinction. You got to understand this. The attack wasn't on the Kremlin in Moscow, the official office, the big symbol of the Russian state. Nope. The target was his personal home in Novo Ogaryovo, his private space. And that is a very, very different and a much more personal kind of attack. And it's exactly because it was so personal that this attack has triggered such a fast and frankly worried reaction from leaders all over the world. Take India's Prime Minister Narendra Modi. Now, his country has kept up relations with both Russia and Ukraine, and he voiced some deep concern. His message was pretty clear. Stuff like this threatens the already super fragile path to peace, and diplomacy should be the absolute focus. Now, former U.S. President Donald Trump, well, he had a much more direct, more personal reaction. He said he actually spoke to Putin, who he described as very angry, and he straight up condemned the act. Trump's whole point was, look, war is offensive, sure, but attacking a leader's actual house, that's a step too far. And look, this isn't just a couple of isolated comments. We're hearing similar things from leaders in other nations too, like Pakistan's prime minister. There really seems to be this broad international agreement that going after the personal home of a head of state, well, that's a dangerous escalation that nobody wants to see. So why? Why is everyone in agreement on this? Why is this specific line so important? Well, it's because when you cross it, you're breaking the unwritten rules of war, and that brings the world a whole lot closer to the most unthinkable outcome. Yeah, there's actually a term for this. Some call it decorum in conflict. It's not some formal treaty, written down on paper. It's more of a long-standing understanding, something that was really forged in the fire of the Cold War. The whole logic of mutually assured destruction meant the superpowers had to agree that the leaders themselves were off limits, because the alternative? A spiral into total world-ending war. And to put this into perspective, Russia has actually pointed out that they know where President Zelensky is. They could have targeted him, but they haven't. They've stuck to this decorum, this unwritten rule, because they know that once that line is crossed, it is incredibly hard to go back. And this is where all that theory becomes terrifyingly real. Russia's response, it wasn't exactly subtle. In an official statement, the Speaker of the Russian parliament made the stakes crystal clear. A direct attack on Putin would be considered grounds for nuclear war. And the logic behind that, as terrifying as it is actually pretty simple. Think about it. Step 1, a head of state is killed. Step 2, the rest of the government starts fearing for its own survival. They see it as an existential threat, thinking, hey, we could be next. And in that moment of pure fear and instability, they could unleash a massive, potentially nuclear retaliation just to make sure they survive. So, okay, given these incredibly high stakes, given the direct threats, what's the immediate fallout? What happens now that this line has allegedly been crossed? Well, the first and most immediate thing is that Russia has gone on high alert. Simple as that. The protection of their leader has shot to the absolute top of their security priorities. And this isn't just a vague state of alert. We're talking about concrete actions. We're seeing new, advanced air defense systems, including S-400 batteries, being deployed specifically around Putin's residence. They're literally creating a fortress to make sure an attack like this cannot succeed. And so, as Russia reinforces its defenses, the world is left with a deeply unsettling question: the decorum of war. Those unwritten rules designed to prevent total escalation appear to be fraying. If leaders themselves are now considered fair game, where does that leave us? Where does modern conflict even end?